Hi, it's Mrs. Sobek. I'm here by popular demand to review for the Unit 4 test. All right, I'm just going to go over every question and the answers. Number 1, what types of transportation improved after the War of 1812? Well, they're making it easier to move from place to place. So canals, making better roads, inventing steamboats to go on those canals, and they even invent the steam engine train when they start to lay railroad tracks, and that's going to improve the connectedness of the country too. Number 2, what was the cotton gin? The cotton gin is a machine that cleans cotton faster than one person could do it on their own. Because of the cotton gin, we see an increased demand for slave labor and for people to grow more cotton as much as they possibly can. So, what manifest destiny action did it lead to after it was invented? Because the cotton gin could clean cotton so fast, Southerners then desired to have more land. They wanted to expand to the west. They were going to move the Native Americans off of their land in order to do that. Number 3, why did plantation owners want to move west? Well, exactly that. They wanted to be able to grow more cotton. They had been over farming their land. Their land was worn out. The land in the west wasn't worn out. They knew that if they could move west, they'd have better land, they could grow more cotton, they could make more money. There was also a belief that if they expanded to the west, that they could add slave states to the United States, which would give them more power in Congress. So who was the ones that were displaced as those plantation owners moved west? The Native Americans, because they were getting pushed off of their land for those white plantation owners to take it over. Number 5, after the War of 1812, the U.S. settled border disputes with what 2 countries? One of the disputes was in the north. That dispute was with Britain. We decide on the 49th parallel as the kind of dividing line between British Canada and the United States. And then in the south, Spain, we decide on the final conclusion in the border with Spain. Spain gives us Florida. Henry Clay came up with a system, number 6, the American system. And the American system was a plan to make the United States economically self-sufficient, that we wouldn't have to rely on other countries, that we could produce things here and then buy those things here. Part of that American system was that hated tariff. Number 7, what was the Missouri Compromise and who wrote it? The Missouri Compromise, remember when Missouri was trying to come in as a slave state, that was potentially going to upset the balance of power, that we had an equal number of slave states and free states in the United States at the time. And so people were really upset about that. Henry Clay comes up with this compromise. He says, let's let Missouri come in at the exact same time as we let Maine come in. And so if Missouri is a slave state and Maine is a free state, then the balance will still be equal. The Missouri Compromise also creates a line, the 36-degree 30 line, so that in the future of the Louisiana Territory, it's already predetermined whether a territory is going to be a future slave state or a future free state. Anything north of the line will automatically be free. Anything south of the line will automatically be slave. Henry Clay, the great compromiser, Henry Clay. Number 8, how did the Missouri Compromise affect the United States? Well, because it created that balance, now there's no fighting over slavery. 20 years of relative peace between the states without any argument about how many slave states or free states there are. Whoops, sorry, I'm scrolling the wrong direction. All right, number 9, what was the Monroe Doctrine and who did Monroe plan to protect with his statement? So the Monroe Doctrine is basically a statement to the world saying European nations are not allowed to come back to the Americas and make colonies. Okay, in particular, really focusing on those brand new Latin American countries, saying that the United States will step in and protect any Latin American country that's trying to defend itself against its former colonizer. This is especially aimed at Spain. So Monroe plans to protect Latin American countries like Mexico, some countries in the Caribbean, some countries in Central and South America from Spanish colonization. Okay. Question number 10, what was the Indian Removal Act? The Indian Removal Act is a law, a national law, that said that Native Americans had to leave their land and move to the Indian Territory that had been created west of the Mississippi River. Okay. Andrew Jackson is a president who strongly supports Indian removal for reasons of gaining their land for manifest destiny ideas like the expansion of the United States from one, eastern half of the North America to covering the whole continent. Because of the Indian Removal Act is why we get question 11. What was the Trail of Tears? The Trail of Tears was the forced removal of the Cherokee people from their land to the Indian Territory. And they call it the Trail of Tears because it was so devastating to the Cherokee people. Okay, number 12, what did the Cherokee do when they were told to move off of their land? Well, they actually do a variety of things, but one thing that they do is that they actually take that to the Supreme Court. They ask the Supreme Court, please, can you say that this law is unconstitutional? We consider ourselves to be our own nation. Therefore, this should not be a law that applies to us. And the Supreme Court agree with them. The Supreme Court say it's an unconstitutional law. Andrew Jackson reacts by forcing them to leave anyway. He ignores the Supreme Court ruling, basically says, no one can stop me. Number 13, who was a strong nationalist before becoming a leader for states' rights? Well, that man is John C. Calhoun, who was Andrew Jackson's vice president. He had been a nationalist, but because of the events that happened with the Tariff of 1828, the nullification crisis, he abandons his nationalist ideas and becomes a states' rights leader, especially supporting South Carolina's right to get rid of the Tariff of 1828 if they want to. That's their philosophy. Calhoun. Number 14, what were the Webster-Hayne debates and what was their main issue? So these were congressional debates between two senators, and they're debating about whether or not the national government or the state government should have more power. This is at the root, the nullification crisis in a nutshell, right? They're saying a state should be able to nullify a national law, and the national government is saying, no, a state should not be able to do that. And so that's what this debate is really about, who has the most power. Number 15 is kind of the flip of number 13, who was John C. Calhoun. So he was the vice president when Andrew Jackson was president, and he's a really important leader in supporting South Carolina's policies like states' rights and nullification. Number 16, who was Henry Clay. Henry Clay, that one who ran for president something like 5 times, never won, but yet was very, very influential in politics. We call him the Great Compromiser. So he is a congressman. He's both a representative and a senator. He runs for office, never wins the office of president, but yet really influences our country throughout a very long period of time. Number 17, who is Daniel Webster? Daniel Webster is from the Webster-Hayne debates. So he is a senator who debates against Senator Hayne. Webster supports nationalism. He wants a strong national government. Okay, he argues against Hayne, who's trying to say that the state has more power. Webster says the national government has more power. He, along with Henry Clay, starts the Whig Party. Number 18, give me some reasons why people move west from 1820 to 1860. It really depends on who you are, right? Some people are moving to get rich. Maybe find some gold. Some people are avoiding paying money that they owe, like they can just kind of disappear. Some people are avoiding law enforcement that's trying to get them for laws that they've broken. Some are trying to go to farm, to trade, to make a better life for themselves. Okay, it kind of just depends on who you are. So that in mind, then thinking about each of these different trails, question number 19 is asking us about why do people move west on each of the different trails. So why do people go on the Oregon Trail? They go because they're going to get the things that they might find in Oregon: land, furs, lumber, right? Going for the resources that are there. Why do people go on the Mormon Trail? Because they are looking for religious freedom. They're creating a colony in Utah for Mormons. Why do people go on the Santa Fe Trail? Well, the Santa Fe Trail goes down towards the Mexican border, so they're going for trade and profit, economic trade with the Mexicans. And then why do people go on the California Trail? Well, gold. They found gold in California. Number 20, who is Brigham Young? Brigham Young is the leader of the Mormons. He's not their first leader, but he's the one who leads them to Utah, kind of escaping that religious persecution after their first leader had been killed back east, taking them to Utah for religious freedom. Out of these trails, the trail that's traveled the most, number 21, is the Oregon Trail. Most people who went west on one of these trails were using the Oregon Trail. Number 22, what is a great example of manifest destiny? This is kind of a weird question, but when you think of manifest destiny, you need to think about those wagons, right? Wagons moving west on any of these trails, people kind of setting out to make their fortune somewhere in the West, and this belief that God had given that land to these Americans to go out and do whatever they wanted to with it. Number 23, why did the British agree to leave the Oregon Territory? Well, they're kind of had been sharing that territory for a little while, and more Americans had moved out there. And so the British don't want to have to fight Americans over this land. There are more Americans than there are British in this territory. And so they basically just say, let's just split it. We don't want to fight. We know there's more of you than there are of us. Let's just draw the line across at the 49th parallel. Number 24, Stephen Austin. Stephen Austin is the American who leads other Americans to settle as a colony in Texas. Most of those Americans who go with him are cotton farmers. Remember, they had agreed that they're going to follow Mexican laws, that they are going to become Catholic and things like that. Stephen Austin is the one who's leading them in. 25, Sam Houston is another important Texan. So he is the leader of the Texan army. He's the one they kind of look around and say, okay, we're going to fight a revolution. Who has any experience? And they find Sam Houston. So they put him as the leader. And then after Texas gains its independence, Sam Houston is elected as the very first president of Texas when it's an independent country for a brief little time. Number 26, who's Zachary Taylor? Zachary Taylor is a military general. He is now on the side of the Americans after they've annexed Texas and they're about to fight with the war with Mexico. So he leads American troops to that north side of the Rio Grande, which leads us directly into the Mexican War after Mexican troops attack his kind of band and start that war. Later on in the war, he is the one who leads some of his troops into Mexico, specifically to meet up with the Mexican general Santa Anna, and he's able to defeat Santa Anna. Number 27, 28, and 29, all of these people are important at the Alamo. So William Travis is the one who leads the Texan soldiers at the Alamo. So when we say Texan, we're talking about Americans who are living in Texas trying to get their independence. And then number 28, Juan Seguin, he is leading the Tejano soldiers at the Alamo. When we say Tejano, we're talking about Mexicans who are living in Texas who are trying to get their independence. Okay. So those two are working together, but leading different groups of people. And then number 29, who are Davy Crockett and Jim Bowie, those are both American frontiersmen who specifically go to Texas to help Texas fight for the independence. Both of them are at the Battle of the Alamo, and both of them die there. So number 30, what happened at the Alamo? Well, it was a 13-day long fight. The Texans had kind of holed up in this mission of the Alamo. Santa Anna's outside with many Mexican troops, and they're kind of bombarding, blockading these people into a siege in the Alamo. The Texans hold out for 13 days, which they feel like is very brave. So how does this affect the Texans? Well, the Alamo becomes a really important symbol to the Texans. They get extremely angry because of what happened at the Alamo. It makes them fight harder. In fact, question number 31 then, what is the battle cry that Sam Houston uses to inspire his troops who then win the next battle? They go into that battle screaming, "Remember the Alamo!" Because they're using that as the inspiration to get them to fight even harder, to say, look how brave we are. So number 32, after Texas became an independent country, they almost immediately asked to join the United States. But people in the United States and in the United States Congress are very afraid that the annexation of Texas would cause a war with Mexico. The reason for that is because Mexico believes that the U.S. had really been behind the Texas Revolution, that they had helped incite the war and get it going. They believed that the United States was helping the Texans. And so it was believed in the United States that the Mexicans would see annexation of Texas as basically an act of war. And so for a short period, about 10 years, the United States refuses to annex Texas. Number 33, this is about the Mexican War. During the Mexican War, the U.S. troops moved to attack Mexico directly at Mexico City. Well, that's the capital of Mexico. So the reason that they do that is that if you attack the capital and you are successful, it ends the war. So Mexico City falls, that ends the war in a victory for the United States. That's why they did that. Number 34, who was the commander of the Mexican army for both the Texas Revolution and the Mexican War? His name is Santa Anna. That's his last name. Don't mix him up with Santa Claus. Santa Anna, the man who lost his leg and then had a funeral for it. So after the Mexican War is over, the United States and Mexico signed a treaty called the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. In that treaty, the United States agrees to give Mexico $15 million and to also pay a little over $3 million for damages that happened during the war. In exchange, Mexico agrees they're going to finally recognize that the Rio Grande is the border between the United States and Mexico. And they're also going to give the Mexican cession to the U.S. The Mexican cession includes New Mexico, Arizona, and California, and some other little chunks of other states. Shortly after that, gold is discovered in California. So number 36, what were the mining camps like in California? Terrible. They were really violent. Tent cities, meaning people are kind of just living in tents, not taking the time to build anything. Extremely, extremely expensive for things that people might want to buy, even just regular everyday things. Number 37, in 1853, we buy the last little chunk of land that completes Manifest Destiny, and that is called the Gadsden Purchase. So it's just this little tiny strip of land along the southern border of New Mexico and Arizona, and we pay Mexico for that last little piece because it completes Manifest Destiny. It helps because they're going to put a railroad through there, and now America has gone from sea to shining sea. And to wrap it up, James K. Polk. James K. Polk was president of the United States kind of during this whole time period of Manifest Destiny. He's the president who promised Manifest Destiny to the United States, and he's the one who did complete that Manifest Destiny through creating the war with Mexico, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, gaining the Mexican cession, and buying the Gadsden Purchase. All right, I hope that you're going to do really good on your test. Make sure you correct anything you might have wrong on your study guide, and then study like crazy. Good luck.